I'm Melissa Shanahan, and this is the Law Firm Owner Podcast, episode number 177. Welcome to the Law Firm Owner Podcast, powered by Velocity Work, for owners who want to grow a firm that gives them the life they want. Get crystal clear on where you're going, take planning seriously, and honor your plan like a pro. This is the work that creates velocity. Hi, guys. You will hear in just a moment an interview with Jake Kimball and myself. Jake is a co-founder and partner of Springs Law Group in Colorado Springs. His partner is Chris Nicolason. They've been on the podcast a couple times together before, and Chris has been on solo, and now we're having Jake on solo. And the reason we're having Jake on is because of this scenario that happened that, now we can laugh at. But when we were going through it, there's some tension, and he's willing to share just his side of that and his experience of that. So you'll hear that. But why I'm saying something before the interview starts is because, we were on a bit of a time crunch towards the end of the interview. And so I think I may have sped through the result for him of getting it done, basically. And you'll have more context here in a bit. And I just want to say that the part, even though we didn't spend as much time on the fact that he followed through and he did what he said he was going to do, that is a really important takeaway. And I don't know if I gave it enough airtime on this episode. So I just want to say the whole episode I think is fantastic and really reflective and good for each of us to think through some of the things he's talking about, because we all have these voices in our head. But at the end, there is a part of me that just wants to acknowledge the work that he did, that he put in, and what he was able to accomplish. And each of us have that opportunity. So enjoy today's episode. Okay, welcome to the podcast this week, everybody. I am here with Jake Kimball of Springs Law Group in Colorado Springs. Jake, do you want to introduce yourself in case people haven't heard you on the podcast before?
Sure. Thanks for having me, Melissa.
Yeah.
My name is Jake Kimball. I am one of the owners of Springs Law Group. It's a firm that Chris Nicolason and I founded back in 2017. My background is I graduated law school, Ohio State, which is doing great right now in football, in 2005, and I've been practicing Colorado Springs since, so it's been 17 years. Mm-hmm. I started out doing, for the first 8 years of my career, mostly insurance defense, and then switched over to plaintiff's work, which I did for a couple of years before we started Springs Law Group.
Cool.
And now I'm doing only personal injury law.
Yeah. You guys are doing very well also. And I'm saying that because you worked really hard over the last 5 years, and here you are. It's really cool to see how well you guys are doing. If you have been listening to this podcast for any length of time, you've heard Jake and Chris on the podcast because we had them on twice, I think, together. And then I had Chris on once by himself. We talked about 75 Hard. That was this past summer. And then I asked Jake if he would come on to talk about something that is funny and we're going to laugh a lot about today.
Hilarious.
Yeah, hilarious. That just an experience that he had that I wanted him to share if he was willing. And he was totally willing, which says a lot about just how great you are and willing to share whatever. So I'm glad you're here.
It's more like I've given up trying to hide my faults. I used to try a lot harder. And now I'm like, oh, well.
Oh, that's great. Well, the other thing that I wanted to mention was, in case you aren't familiar with Springs Law Group and with the podcast episodes from before, is I have had the honor and the privilege of working with Springs Law for over 3 years now. And so I've seen, it's been quite the journey and pretty remarkable in terms of the growth that they've had, which did not happen without a lot of hard work and dedication and commitment. And so I've watched this journey and I've facilitated pieces of it, and it's been a gift. So I know them very well, is what I'm saying. So that's why I really wanted Jake to come on this podcast, because the experience we're going to share, it's just a perfect example of, listen, when you have something you're committed to, it's easy to sort of step to the side or get busy with things, and you got to come back to it. You got to honor your commitments. You don't have to, but you have the opportunity to, even when it feels like you can't. So I guess we'll just share the experience if that's okay with you. And then everybody know what we're talking about. And then we can talk through it. Well, you guys at your last retreat, end of June, we had a retreat. And you guys set your goals and rocks like we normally do in the retreats. And in September on a call, we were doing a check-in on rocks, and you said something like, Melissa, that's not going to get done. It's been too crazy. It's just not going to happen. I think. Am I correct so far?
Yeah. And I can give you a little more backstory.
Yes, do it.
So we're coming up on the end of the quarter. I know that you're going to give me shit at the next retreat.
Mm-hmm.
And our case manager, who's on the leadership team at the leadership meeting, she's sort of new. Her name's Amanda, and she's been like doing her best as a new employee to follow up with the partner who's not doing his rock, but in like a nice way.
Yeah.
And, just checking up on the rocks. And I'm just like, yeah, I haven't done it. So it's already nagging at me because I've got my own conscience, as beat down as it might be. But then she keeps bringing it up and I'm like, yeah. And so then that's kind of in the background in my brain. No, and I know you're going to bring it up. I'm just like, oh, here we go. So like you said, we know each other very well. So I usually know what your response will be. But also like, I was in a really bad mood that day too, when we had our call. So you go back to.
Okay. No, I'm glad you said all that. And actually, I was just thinking, for those of you who don't know a lot or understand, goals and rocks, goals are numbers you're shooting for. Rocks are we set quarterly rocks. They are the key efforts that are going to get done in order to get yourself and make sure you're on track for the goals. So that's what people are on the hook for. Anyone I work with, the goal doesn't matter. You have to have a goal because you need something to line yourself up with. But, the whole quote about the smartest people on the planet are always reaching for the next rung on the ladder, but they know it's not about the next rung. It's about the stretch. Rocks are the stretch. Like that's the work you're putting in, that you're doing, the intention behind how you spend your time, your effort, all of that in order to make that next rung on the ladder, the goal, inevitable. So that's what people are on the hook for when they work for me, is the rocks. That's the accountability piece. Do you want to share what the rock was, that project was?
Yeah, it was to create attorney performance standards. So as we've grown, we have 2 associates now, and it was just me back up. So my role in the firm is managing partner. So I'm managing the 2 associates, and then we definitely foresee hiring other lawyers. And we want to make sure that the performance standards are in alignment with our core values, that they're in alignment with our consciences, that the attorneys aren't cutting corners, that they aren't undersettling, things like that. So we had identified in the retreat that we needed to create some performance standards, and I was on board with the rock when we created it. Yeah, so that was the rock.
Okay. And then as we get through the quarter, and you did have a crazy quarter, like with onboarding and hiring, and there were a couple people that
Yeah, let me make a record that I had a lot of really good excuses.
You did, but let's just
I can list them all out.
Let's share. I mean, there's 1 or 2 employees that left the firm or were removed from the firm, whichever. Yeah.
Yeah. So by September 15th, and these are the things when you started in on me about my rock, these are the things I brought up to you. So Gretchen, our longtime office manager, had recently left. And like I mentioned earlier, we had a new case manager. And then one of Gretchen's roles was doing liens, which in personal injury is a really big deal. And it's also, I felt like it has been our Achilles heel. It's been our weakness, and it slows down the settlements. It sometimes diminishes the settlement value because we don't take more than the client. So if the liens are high, we have to reduce our fee. And then we've had cases where we've made a mistake on the lien, and so then we pay out of our own operating account in order to cover that so the client doesn't get mad. So liens are a big deal for me. And so Gretchen had been working on them. She's a great employee. She did a great job. So then when she left, I took over them while we were looking for somebody new. So then we actually used a recruiter who we really like. She found a candidate that Chris and I loved. We hired the candidate. On the 4th day, she quit, said that she was overwhelmed and basically she couldn't handle the stress of the leans.
Mm-hmm.
And we had sort of brought Gretchen on. Gretchen's going to law school right now, but she's a kind-hearted person, so she agreed to train that person who quit.
Mm-hmm.
And so then it was like, oh, so now we got to train someone else. And I wanted to take a different tack on training in the sense of like, all right, I want to slow this down. I want to be a little more intentional about the method that we use to train the leans person. And so then, of course, in my hubris, I think that no one can do it as well as I can.
Uh-huh.
So I'm like, all right, I'm going to do the training this time, and I'm going to dig into it. And we found another new candidate. And so I'm really spending a ton of time training.
Mm-hmm.
So in addition to the ordinary responsibilities of the managing partner and the other stuff I'm trying to get done, I'm trying to do leans and also train a new leans person more in depth this time. And to be crass in my mind, I thought this rock can go fuck itself. I don't care. And I'm not trying to be crass for the sake of being crass. I'm just trying to be accurate. That was my whole attitude at that point.
Yeah, totally. Okay. So I'm so glad you just said everything you just said. So we get on this call and you said you'd had a bad day already by the time this call happened. Yeah. And I'm like, Jake, I get to Jake. And
something else, which I'm sure Chris would shout amen to the rooftops. I do not like to be told what to do. So then when you're telling me, you got to honor this and blah, blah, I don't care for that. Like I need it. Like when I'm calm and not mad, I know I need it. But that doesn't mean I receive it well when it happens. So like, let's say that you struggle with your nutrition and that nutrition's a problem and that your body fat percentage is too high and that you tend to eat junk food. Mm-hmm. And so you're sitting there at a table at McDonald's and your personal trainer walks in and is like, what are you doing? You should be eating salad. Like, I think I would probably tell him, like, I don't want to swear again. It was just, you get out. Like, so that's kind of how my mindset is. And, that's one of the things I want to talk to you a little bit later about the epiphany I had on this, but I don't like to be told what to do.
Yeah.
It's an issue. And so then also...
First of all, let's just be clear. I wasn't telling you what to do. I was just calling you out for the thing you said you were going to do. Correct? I wasn't telling you what to do.
All right. So if we're going to parse the language.
Yes, let's do it.
I had already decided that I wasn't going to do the rock. So then you were telling me I didn't do the rock. You're telling me what to do. That's how I...
Okay. Fair.
That's how I heard it and through my filter.
That's fair. But what's funny about that is that we enter into this agreement. It's basically an agreement at the retreat that these are the things, like, we all understand that this is what's happening. You made a call without, like, I didn't know you made that call. I didn't know any of that. Like, in your head, you just flip the script and then you come on this call. I am not going to flip my script.
Well, and I'd already talked to Chris, my partner, and said, I'm not doing
that's
this.
Interesting. Yeah.
And he's like,
okay. So you came to the call, and when it was like, we're going around, I was like, okay, Jake, how's it going with your rock? And then you were basically like, it's not going to get done. I'm not going to do it. I haven't even started it. And I was like, why? And I can't remember what you said, but probably just shared everything that we've shared here, just the craziness of the quarter and all that. And I don't remember my exact words. And actually, I could pull that clip and just see if you want. If you don't want me to share it, I won't. But we could.
You can. I don't care.
Okay, we could pull the clip.
Again, like I said, I'm done with the part where I try and cover up my weaknesses. So you're welcome to put it up. I don't have any secrets.
So then somehow, basically the gist of it was, I was like, you don't get to just flake out on a rock. Like, that's not what we're doing here. If that's what we're, why were we here? If that's what's allowed. And I could tell you weren't happy for sure, but I don't think I knew how upset you were or how mad internally you were. I just knew that you weren't pumped, but also I have a job to do. If I don't do that job, it would have been compassionate. And by the way, I wasn't mean. I was just stating, like, that's not what we're doing here. And then, but if I would have said,
when you called me fat and lazy, I thought that crossed the line.
I did not do that. That's funny. But here's the truth. In my personal life, I think too often I'm very in tune with where someone is, and I try to make sure that they feel okay. This is like a thing. It's not even necessarily people pleasing, but just making sure everybody's feeling all right and that they don't feel like suffering or pain. And I'm really good at it. I can help in those situations and I can make someone feel connected to, and I can like all the things. But when I have my professional hat on, if I had to do that, people would not get as far as they could because no one is actually saying or holding them accountable, no matter how painful it is. And I know that there's exceptions to that. It's not like at all costs, but I have to keep that level of certainty and stability around what's expected. And if I don't do that, people won't get their stuff done because we're all normal humans. By the way, what you're saying is about you're calling weaknesses, everybody has that. Everybody, me included. I think coaches are important for that reason. If you care about something, having a coach to line you up with, making sure that you follow through and helping you overcome barriers and all that, I think it's important. So I could sense, and I remember feeling like, okay, he's pissed right now, but also I can't say something different because then I'm not doing my job. And I don't need to be mean, but I do need to be very matter of fact.
One of the things that I remember feeling in that call is she doesn't get it. Mm-hmm. She doesn't understand everything I'm trying to juggle. Mm-hmm. And the reason I'm saying this is because like this is a narrative that I often have when people hold me accountable, right? So I've had personal trainers and nutrition coaches. I've had you in the past because this isn't the first time I pushed back on you. And so I had I just remember. So now I characterize it as this. At the time I didn't, but now I look at it as like I am feeling like a victim. So the victim story that I had in that circumstance is I don't have enough time. I have a lot to do and she doesn't get it. This rock is not as important as the other things I'm trying to do. I'm not being selfish. I'm choosing priorities. It's my job to look at the things I'm responsible for and decide what is priority. And God damn it, Melissa doesn't get it. And so she's giving me shit about this. Yeah, I get it. I agree to it. I've heard this before. I got it. Also, things changed. I didn't know at the time I signed up for this that the leans person would quit after 4 days, that I was going to have to train the person So the problem with the victim mentality is, in my opinion, is that it is a form of surrender. Like you are surrendering to the forces around you. Well, let me say this. I am surrendering to the forces around me, saying that I cannot do something and it's not my fault. I did everything I can do. It's not my fault. And so I think, in my opinion, Jake's philosophy of life, victimhood is a way to avoid responsibility. So if you can come up with a narrative, a story of why you cannot accomplish a goal, then it excuses you from the choices that you made. So even, if I was lucid, which when I'm in a bad mood and someone's coming at me, I don't believe that I'm lucid. It's a kind of form of like, I'm backed in the corner and I'm going to fight because Jake needs to be right. So when I'm not like that, I can look back and I can say, come on, man, like I could go back through the last quarter and find plenty of hours that you spent, getting ready for your fantasy football draft, catching up on Ozark, scrolling through Instagram on your phone while your kids are running around. Like there's plenty of time. I just chose to spend it differently. So then when I ran out of time, instead of saying, well, I made these choices, I took on the victim mentality. I am not responsible for this situation. This person, Melissa, doesn't understand my full situation. I'm trying to tell her, but she's not listening. So that's a feeling that I get a lot. I don't care for it at all. I usually don't recognize it at the time. It has to be that I cool off and then I look back. Most of the times that I get really, really mad. I'm not saying I was really, really mad with you. I was just annoyed. But most of the times in my life, when I get really, really mad, if I look back, I'm being a victim. My wife doesn't understand me. She doesn't get it. She doesn't get what I'm trying to do. My business partner, he doesn't get it. He doesn't understand this. my kid. She doesn't get how much I sacrifice, and she's giving me attitude. There's like the times when I get really mad, I don't sit and think, well, what did I do to contribute to this situation? Well, what could I have done better? It's usually just being furious that things aren't going my way. And actually, I have a 4-year-old that is really good at being a mirror of that. So I have 6 kids. She's my 5th kid, and I've never had a kid like this. Like, she is tough. She has these expectations for how people will act and be and how the day will go. And if they are not met, she is furious. And at first I was like, what is this kid? Where's she come from? She's crazy. And then I'm kind of like, oh no, I can see some parallels.
That's great.
Yeah. So yeah, I think it's a victim story. And I can elaborate on that when we finish kind of what happened with this.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, gosh, some of the things you said really resonate with me. And I identify with that. Like, I'm hoping that everybody listening can see themselves in this, because I don't think any of us are exempt from this. I think some are better than others at default states. Like, do they have that victim mentality or do they not? But all of us have some of that. And yeah,
and I think like lawyers, like I have the same feeling when you're telling me that you're holding me accountable or whatever, as I do when a judge does it. And I'm like, this dickhead, he has no idea what's going on in my practice. Yeah. He has no idea the stunts opposing counsel is pulling that I'm not going to bring up because I'm going to take the higher road. He doesn't know that the insurance company has done this, this, and this. And I get this sort of like victim mentality, which is I can't control what this judge is going to do. And he's going to screw us over for whatever, or he's chewing me out for something, and he just doesn't get it. Whereas if I had a cool head, I would think, oh, well, if I'd handled it differently this way, or I'd sent these emails, or if I'd, met this deadline or filed this motion, then I wouldn't be here getting my ass chewed by the judge. It's the same. I think it's when someone holds you accountable and you think you have I keep doing this. Let me speak in first person. When I am held accountable and I think that I have a good excuse, I get pissed at that person holding me accountable, because it's just, they don't get it. They don't understand. They're missing this or that. Must be nice to sit up there in your ivory tower and judge me. That thing.
But I guess what you're saying is your definition of a good excuse can shift, or like, what is a good excuse? I don't know.
Oh, that's a deep question. What's a good excuse? None. Right.
So
I mean, if you're really trying to hit a goal, I don't really think there's a good, so I'll bring up nutrition again, because this is something, it's a lifelong battle. Grew up a little husky, and for most of my 20s, I just let myself go, and I got really big, and I always had a good excuse for it, or I always had like just a reason outside myself. And then when I would actually try to fix the situation, so like, let's say that I'm going to go on a diet, I'm going to restrict calories, okay, or I'm going to do keto or something like that. I'll do it. I'll start it. I'll do really well. I mean, everyone in my head is on board that we need to lose some fat. And then something comes up and I'll make like a little excuse. Well, it's a birthday. I don't want to be rude and not eat a birthday cake, right? Or eat a piece of birthday cake. Oops, Freudian slip. I probably ate the whole cake, but I don't want to be rude and turn down birthday cake. Oh, it's Christmas. Like, well, part of the fun of Christmas is sitting around with your kids, sipping hot cocoa and eating popcorn, watching a movie. So what is a good excuse? I mean, are those good excuses? Like, I guess like another one I use a lot with nutrition is, well, I don't want to be like a freak. I want to be like balanced, and I enjoy I don't want to just only eat grass-fed beef and never enjoy it, so then you give yourself little outs like that, I mean, that sounds reasonable. But then in 3 months, when I look back and I stand on the scale and I'm the same weight, I'm like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Like, I've been trying really hard,
right?
And I'm the same weight. And I'm like, well, have I really been trying hard? So I don't know.
Yeah.
I would say like a good excuse in that situation would be I got knocked unconscious, and then the people who were feeding me intravenous fluids were giving me too many calories. Like, Do you know what I mean? Like,
Well,
what's a
okay.
good excuse? Like all of them and none of them.
Can I offer my perspective on this, which by the way, I'm not perfect at, but it feels like truth to me. And I'm curious what you think about it. I think part of making a well thought out plan is deciding ahead of time what excuses get to make it. Like if there's a list of reasons why you are not going to do what you said you were going to do, and it's one of those, but you're deciding it ahead of time, then it's okay to like let it go for the day. Or I don't know. I'm just thinking of, we could use it with nutrition. We could use it with rocks. But if one of these things happen, maybe there's like two things that you would feel full of integrity still by saying, and I'm not going to follow through. But you decide ahead of time. If those things happen, then it's okay. You decided ahead of time that you can set it to the side. But if it's not one of those two things, and then you get through the quarter and you feel this pull to not do it anymore because of an excuse, but it feels so valid, but it wasn't something you decided ahead of time, then you have to do it anyway. You got to do it anyway. So I'm just thinking of the hot cocoa, for example. It could kind of be like, this is my protocol. If my kids want to have hot cocoa around the tree, Christmas, the holidays, I'm going to do that. It's like a decision ahead of time. But even the birthday cake probably wouldn't make the cut. Like if you really think about it, in the moment, it makes the cut as an excuse that feels reasonable or justified. But ahead of time, you probably would have had a different list. I don't know. I just think, because I don't think it's black and white. We can't be perfect, but deciding ahead of time can be helpful.
But if you decided those ahead of time as exceptions, then you never violated your goal, right? So if I say to myself,
never violated your plan.
So, this is an interesting philosophical question, because a therapist I had once challenged me to stop making goals. I just laugh at it because it sounds like the dumbest therapy. Like, what in the world? But like, the reason is I make goals, and then when I don't achieve them, I go hard on myself.
Yourself up.
It gets dark. Like it's not even like funny, haha. It's bad.
Yeah.
My self-talk gets nasty. And another thing related to that she pointed out with me is, Jake, you set expectations at level 10. Let's say, I'm just picking a number. And then when you achieve level 8, even if it might be better than what you thought or better than what someone else would do, you destroy yourself on the gap. She called it the gap. So the difference between the 8 and the 10.
Yeah.
And so her thing, and she said, well, when did you start making goals for yourself? And I was like, I always made goals for myself. I don't, I grew up in, I don't want this to be about religion, but I grew up in the Mormon church, and it's very goal driven. They push you to set goals and achieve them. Stephen Covey came out of that. Stephen Covey, 7 The Habits of Highly Effective People, or whatever that book is that I haven't read. He's LDS Mormon. So it's very goal driven. And when she challenged me to not make goals, I said, that's what losers do. Losers don't set goals. It's losers who don't work. And I'm like, I know that sounds really judgmental. I am very judgmental of myself. And one of the things, the specters, the ghosts that I have, or the demons, is I do not want to be a loser. Right? Like, I don't know where it came from, but I do know where it came from, but that's not for this podcast. But I'll turn this into a therapy session. So then going back to the goal thing, it's something I struggle with a lot, because so I've been trying this year really hard not to set a goal for my body weight.
Okay.
And it's driving me nuts, because
I'm trying really hard not to. It's either you set a goal or you didn't. Well, I'm trying not to.
I keep setting it, and then I'm like, stop it. Because I know I have a little body dysmorphia. So the nutrition goal, they will be endless. There's no end to that. So I agree with her on that, but I think you have to find a balance is what I'm getting at. It's taking me a long time, but like with goal setting and not allowing excuses, or only having certain excuses.
Yeah.
Because maybe you set your goal incorrectly. That happens with me in nutrition a lot. But I beat myself up when I don't reach a goal. And so I think maybe one of the self-defense mechanisms is coming up with quote unquote good excuses. So that I don't beat myself up.
I think you're probably right. That's a good way to put it. And again, you're not the only one that does this. That's why I wanted this podcast to happen, because I knew you would have a lot to say around stuff that people deal with. And maybe even right now, Jake, you're like, well, they don't deal with it like me. They don't understand the way it is for me, which is kind of the same. But people have the same thing. So I'm so glad you're willing to talk about it some more. One thing that as we were talking about, I wish I would have said differently a minute ago, is that like setting a goal, I think that can be really healthy. And I'm not saying that you should set goals for nutrition. You should, like, everybody's on their own journey. But when you set a goal, it's not the excuses along the way to the goal. I think when you set a goal, it's very, very important that you make a plan to get to the goal. So for workouts and eating, making a plan for how many days a week, what does that look like? What nutrition is off limits? Like all of that, setting that plan. And then the excuses are for deciding to not honor the plan, like on a day, and not an excuse to give up on the goal. That's not what I mean. And so even with a rock, people set rocks, and these things are not easy. Rocks are big efforts. They're big projects. Some are easier than others, and it depends on your bandwidth that you have to give to it, et cetera. But part of what I teach, which I don't know, and we do not have to get into here, that you and Chris were like my early peeps that are a little eye rolly at the Monday Map, Friday Wrap. And so seriously planning your time on how you're going to get that project done is pretty powerful and pretty meaningful. And maybe you do that in your own way. But when you set aside time, like, I'm going to spend 2 hours a week on this, and this is where I'm going to do it. It's going to be an hour here and it's going to be an hour there, whatever. Then you can make your list of excuses why you would allow yourself to be thrown off from honoring the plan. Then that feels more reasonable, where it's like a day where one of your bulleted excuses happens. Then without guilt, without worrying about it, you let that day go because it was one of the things that you said ahead of time. And then you can keep, like, you show up the next time for it. But it's not like giving up on the end goal. And that's kind of what I meant. I do think that's harder to do than, it's easier said than done. But the practice of that feels worthy. Practice, not perfection. The practice of it feels worthy, because then at least if you go off track, you knew ahead of time it was a good reason to go off track for that day. And then the next day you're supposed to show up. If it's not one of these bullets that you already said, these are my excuses, so to speak, I'm putting air quotes around excuses, or like reasons why you wouldn't show up, then I think it also helps you live a bit more balanced, because you can put as many of those bullets there as you want, right? You get to decide ahead of time, but it doesn't have to be super strict. It could be realizing that net, it's going to be a positive if you move through your plan and make these exceptions when they come up that you've already dictated ahead of time, or you've already stated ahead of time. Then you aren't going to be perfect on your plan, and you don't beat yourself up over it because you already said, I'm not going to be perfect in my plan. And it gives you more balance. You get to have hot cocoa with your kids instead of having this internal struggle around, I shouldn't be doing this. I'm not going to do this. I shouldn't do this, but I want to do this. Like, that internal struggle goes away if you decide ahead of time. At least it helps it go away if you've decided ahead of time.
Yeah. And I think that's a good point with the plan, because a lot of times my problem is the plan. It's not the goal itself. And I think that's why my therapist was sort of like, she didn't say never make a goal again in your life. She's like, can you please take a break? Like, I was talking to her about New Year's resolutions. She's like, what if you didn't make any? Because I think she wanted me to reset. But like, I think about this, for some reason, this is easier for me to see in the nutrition world, because like, so for example, I tried doing the ketogenic diet. So that if anyone, I don't know who hasn't heard of ketogenic diet, but you can't eat any carbs at all. Okay. So, and I won't debate whether that's healthy or not, but it does help you lose a lot of weight at first. So when I've done the keto diet, I've lost weight, and then I've also always quit it. And I now know through like reading and self-reflection that the goal is to lose weight. The plan was to follow the keto diet. My plan is flawed because I will never not eat carbs. Like, I can go for a period, but like I work out a lot, and carbs are really important for energy. And then like, I'm not David Goggins. I'm not a bikini model. I don't have that kind of willpower. So I'm setting up my plan to get to a goal is something I can't do for long term. And so like, if my goal is to lose 20 pounds and the plan is to do keto and have a lose it in a month, well, that's a shit plan. Like that's just, I'm just setting myself up to be pissed at the end of the month.
Yeah.
And so I have been trying to come up with a little bit better plans. And I think what you're talking about, where you're building excuses, that's just building in contingencies in your plan.
Yeah, exactly. And it doesn't mean you get to stop on your goal. It means that the plan that you made, you get to skip for the day because of X without beating yourself up. That's the thing. I guess that's the thing. Because some people can do that and they can pick right back up. Most people don't. If they stop for a day, they start to slip entirely. So that's a thing. And all of that is driven by a narrative in our head. So if you already sort of pre-decide what the narrative gets to be when these things happen, then it's easier to stay on track. And especially when we're talking about, even with your business, it's never going to be perfect. There's never like this saunter into success. That's just not possible. But setting a goal is important for business. Setting a goal is important. And making a well thought out, deliberate plan to get there is important. And then the third piece is honoring the plan. So it's like, if your plan isn't good enough, you can't honor your plan because it sucked. It wasn't good enough. Like, it wasn't realistic. It wasn't going to allow you to get to where you wanted to go. And so when I say well thought out, I really mean that from even a time perspective. Like, if you're supposed to spend time on doing things, you have to plan when you're going to do that. And that's a really great thing. It's funny, like with private clients, I don't get up in their business about how they spend their time. I think that they are responsible for getting their stuff done. And so they get to decide how they do that. But in Mastery Group, I do. Like the group people, it's like a different level of work. And so the private clients are higher level work, deeper work, bigger moves, bigger stuff going on. And I'm privy to a lot more in the business because I'm there with people working on their businesses. But in the minutia, I'm less involved. And the other group, it's like they have more success with the minutia because I'm more involved in it. And sometimes private clients I don't know. Private clients oftentimes are different. If they can invest in being a private client, they usually tend to have an attitude of like, kind of like you, where it's like, just, I got this. I don't need,
I'll get there.
Yeah, exactly. So it's an interesting balance, but every human needs it, no matter how successful your business is. It's like it's interesting for me as a coaching perspective. There's two things that are interesting. From a coaching perspective, it's interesting to think about how can I be more useful to people in this way and help them learn about themselves and make better plans, et cetera. But then also for myself as a human, this is an interesting conversation because it's like, this is what I strive to do for myself and I do for myself, sometimes with success, sometimes with failure, and continuing to learn what isn't working about the plan or my excuse is not enough. Like I didn't think hard enough at the front end. I don't know, but all this is just brain food.
Yeah. And I think like you're talking about the difference between clients. I think different people need different things at different spots in their lives.
Yeah.
Like, so
totally.
I talked to you about like my 20s where I was really inactive and like you couldn't pay me to exercise. And now, like, if we're talking about a weight loss plan, like at night, I think, oh, what am I going to do tomorrow for the gym? I think I'm going to do this, this, and this. It's really like, I love planning out what my workout will be. But if you said like, plan out your diet for the next day, I'd be like, fuck you.
Yeah.
It's just so that I think that like everyone has different spot, like, and it's not because I'm like some, evolved person. And I don't think that's what you're saying with the different groups, but it's just at different parts of your life, you have different challenges. And so like right now, if I had a personal trainer, I would need them like following me around and slapping food out of my hand. But then when it came time to work out, I'd be fine. Like, I'd be like, leave me alone. I got this. So.
Okay, I guess we should tell everybody how this ended up. Basically, at the end of this call, you were like, I made some points on like why this is important to stick with. And
I think I just conceded to get you to stop talking.
Oh,
fine,
this
Melissa.
This is how he got me to stop talking. It's fine, Melissa. I'll do it. That's what he said at the end. I was like, okay, let's go. Like, whatever
so
it
that
takes,
was
man.
so that was a Thursday. And so then, of course, like I didn't do anything on the weekend. And so then Monday morning, I can't remember exactly how I found out, but a water main had broke at our building, had flooded the parking lot, and the bathrooms and were unusable, all this stuff. And so we told everyone just work from home. So I barricade myself in my room because that's my bedroom. Because that's the only place where I have little kids. The babysitter comes and watches them at my house. So locked the door of my room, sat down, and this. The funny thing is like I literally thought, I don't really have anything to do today because, I can't train on the lanes, and I'm, I literally was like, well, what am I going to do? And then with a horrified thought, I was like, oh yeah, the rock. So then all my excuses were removed by the universe, which was just sort of funny. So then I actually did draft a whole set of performance standards because it was just like uninterrupted time. No one's calling me. No one's popping in the office. So I got those all drafted and then had a meeting with the attorneys to get their comments and their buy-in, and then put them together and put them on Tetra and finish the fucking rock within like, I don't know, 2 weeks.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so then it was like the epiphany I had with that is that I think when I was talking to you about it is I went to this self-help conference. Actually, Chris Gretchen and I all went to it. And one of the things that they talked about that really hit me was, what is the story you tell yourself? And when they first said, I was like, what are you talking about? The story you told myself? This is stupid. Like, that's how all new ideas are greeted by me. It's like, that's stupid. Defense mechanism. No, we don't want to change. So when you're stressed, and I think their phrase was when you're in the shit. When you're in the shit, what is the story you tell yourself? Because that is how you'll behave. So I realized, just reflecting on this and then going back into like sort of a similar epiphany I had in high school, which is the story I tell myself is I don't have enough time.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have enough time. There's not enough time in the day for me to do the things I want to do or I need to do. And this is a false story. So the epiphany I had in high school was in, I think it was 10th grade. 10th grade, I wasn't getting very good grades. I was sort of, I was one of those kids that's like smart enough to get good grades without trying, but it was starting to catch up to me. And I was pulling some C's in high school. And I was just like, I don't know. Like, I don't like doing homework, blah, blah, blah. And then I turned 16, and where I was, you couldn't get a job until you turned 16. And so I turned 16 right before my junior year, and I got a job because we didn't have a lot of money growing up, so I really wanted a job, and it was working. So right after school, I had to go immediately home, and I didn't have my own car. I'd share with my siblings and go home, and we would carpool to this job where I would work, and then I would get home at like 6:30. And my first thought then was, I'm not going to have time to do homework.
Mm-hmm.
And, I kind of was freaking out about it. And I think I talked to my dad, and he kind of talked me down, but I never had better grades. I got straight A's because I had to take control of the situation. I studied for the ACT, got a great score. It really turned things around for me and for my whole life, because then I got into a good undergrad university, which then I got into good law school. So the story that I was telling myself is just like, which is funny because like now, I hear my kids do this. So my elementary school kid will say, I don't have enough time to get all this homework done. And my junior high kid will say, wait till you get to junior high. It's so much harder. And the high school kids will be like, no, it's so much harder in high school. Yeah. And then, of course, the parents are there looking at each other like, haha, these kids have no idea how much being an adult sucks, right? So, but like really, they're all telling the same story, but their point in the story is the one where it's really hard, right? And so adults are like, no, it's really hard when you're an adult. You don't have enough time. Well, we all know that's not true. Look at how much money streaming services are making right now. Like, we all got time. Like, we just aren't spending it the way we should. And so it's just that the story, like, what is the story you tell yourself when you're in the shit? And I think it's kind of like, what are the excuses? But it's more like the narrative you have about yourself. Like, the narrative I have about myself is, I have 6 kids and I partner in a law firm and I take guitar lessons and I can go to the gym and I don't have time for this. I had to get rid of one of them. I just did it this morning on the way because I haven't been practicing guitar, and I got a guitar lesson, and I'm like, I don't have time for this. I need to, like, what am I doing? And it's the same thing, but like, what did I do last night? I watched, we'll watch a couple shows on Netflix. Like,
right.
And
but
so
I can just hear people saying, yeah, but I need space to relax. I need downtime.
Yeah.
And that is true, but there's some sort of unaware or like lack of awareness that happens or unconsciousness that happens consistently, repeatedly with checking out.
And the times when I've like buckled down, I've never had a time where I buckled down and I thought in the past, like, wow, I was so miserable. I never had any time for myself. Like,
right.
You find the time.
Right. And you're so pumped about whatever results you're getting because of the work you're putting in.
And I'm sure there's some people who are workaholics who do need to chill out. My dad. But I think generally for me, and I'm trying really hard not to be judgmental of other people. So let's say for me, I have a story that I tell myself when I'm in the shit. And it is usually false. It is, it's just, or the story I tell myself. I start out with saying I'm a husky kid, right? I was a husky kid, right? And there's a story I tell myself.
Yeah.
Well, I'm always going to be a little pudgy, right? So sometimes the stories we tell ourselves are correct, I'm sure, but like I think most of the time it's bullshit.
Well, it's not necessarily about right or wrong or correct or incorrect. It's more about, is it useful? Does it inhibit progress?
Yeah, or is it is a story you're telling yourself that you're a victim of time or the universe or your spouse or your partner or your children?
Yeah.
Or are you going to actually like take some responsibility for the choices that you made?
Right.
But I think the story I tell myself is to absolve myself of responsibility.
This is such a good conversation. Thank you for coming on and for being so transparent.
You're welcome.
So good. So
hopefully it helps.
It was like one of the just couple times you've been, at least in the moment, very annoyed and pissed at me. But I knew we'd be all right. I didn't know that you would get your rock done. So I was super pumped that, you came and you got it done before the retreat. It was,
it's funny. Awesome. Like I almost didn't want to tell you because I'm like, you're going to be like, I told you so.
No, I would never say that. Well, thanks for coming on the podcast.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me, Melissa.
Talk to you soon.
All right. Thanks.
Hey, you may not know this, but there's a free guide for a process I teach called Monday Map, Friday Wrap. If you go to velocitywork.com, it's all yours. It's about how to plan your time and honor your plans so that week over week, more work that moves the needle is getting done in less time. Go to velocitywork.com to get your free copy. Thank you for listening to the Law Firm Owner Podcast. If you're ready to get clearer on your vision, data, and mindset, then head over to velocitywork.com where you can plug in to quarterly strategic planning with accountability and coaching in between. This is the work that creates velocity.